Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to another edition of Crimes of the Week International. Authorities in Thailand's Chumphon province say that a Swiss man and his Thai wife are both facing charges this week following a disturbing and dangerous alleged kidnapping incident that played out in a speeding vehicle. The whole thing reportedly began sometime on January 17th, when police in Lang Suan district began receiving calls from concerned motorists. Callers stated that they had witnessed what they believed might be a kidnapping in progress after they saw a black truck speeding recklessly down a local highway. The female passenger inside was screaming for help and had opened one of the vehicle's doors. Alarmingly, at least one person had captured footage where it looked like the woman might be preparing to jump from the moving truck. Other witnesses stated that the male driver was making threatening gestures, and it seemed like he might have a gun. Thanks to the footage, as well as descriptions from the emergency callers, police were able to locate the black pickup truck. The male suspect refused to stop, prompting a dramatic chase, but the pursuit came to an end when authorities managed to intercept the vehicle in Pato district about 12 miles away. Things got more complicated, though, once police began questioning the man and woman who were inside the truck. It turned out that the driver was a 37-year-old Swiss national by the name of Sandro, and the woman who had been seen screaming inside was his 40-year-old wife, Lamai. Lamai explained that the incident had been the result of an argument between her and her husband over jealousy that had spiraled out of control. She said that she had been forced into the truck against her will, but that Sandro never had any kind of weapon. She also admitted to drinking throughout the incident. Police now say that's not all that Lamai and Sandro were doing, though. After noticing a strong odor of drugs in the truck, they administered tests which showed both had consumed methamphetamine. This was especially concerning because, according to local news sources, the couple's young child was in the car during the high-speed chase as well. Authorities arrested Sandro following the incident and say that he and Lamai have both since been charged with drug offenses. It's unclear if Sandro will be facing further charges over the alleged kidnapping and car chase. Representatives from the Scotland police say that they are trying to piece together the circumstances behind a strange and deadly situation last week after a man was found dead following a chaotic incident involving fireworks inside of a residential neighborhood. The whole thing unfolded shortly after 4 p.m. on January 18th in the town of Paisley. Police were called after terrified residents of a housing estate in the town's Foxbar area alerted them that there was some kind of fireworks battle happening out in the street. Footage of the dramatic incident, which was recorded by witnesses, shows several of the pyrotechnics being fired from a window on the second story of a home there. The fireworks look like they are being aimed at 3 people below who are dressed in black and seem to be attempting to dodge them. The fireworks explode in the street, in neighbors' yards, and near vehicles until one of them appears to go off inside of the room in the home where they are being lit. Shortly after, the group of people in black clothing could be seen storming into the residence. When officers arrived at the scene, they found the body of a 21-year-old man named Robert McNally in the area. He was pronounced dead at the scene, though currently his cause of death has not been released and is reportedly being treated as unexplained. Police did reveal that they have arrested one man, a 19-year-old named Jackson Miller, on murder charges. However, so far, the cause of the whole situation and the circumstances surrounding it remain a mystery. At the time of this recording, police are asking members of the public who might have any information about the case to please come forward. They are also specifically requesting additional CCTV and dashcam footage, which they say will aid in the investigation. Authorities in the Vietnamese province of Dong Nai say that a 36-year-old doctor has been officially indicted on murder charges this week, more than a year after he allegedly killed his pregnant lover as part of a chilling bid to cover up his infidelity. According to reports, the suspect, 36-year-old Dan Sun, met the 35-year-old victim, identified only by the initials TTBN, sometime near the end of 2022. At the time, Sun was a respected general surgery specialist at Dong Nai General Hospital, and the pair crossed paths when TTBN brought in a relative for treatment and he was their doctor. Despite both being married, Sun and TTBN began a romantic relationship, one that lasted for more than a year. However, things began to sour when in March of 2024, TTBN told Sun she was pregnant with his child. She also said that if Sun didn't take responsibility, she would reveal their affair to his family and his workplace. That's when Sun allegedly began plotting TTBN's murder. The following month, Sun reportedly invited the 35-year-old to his private on-call room at the hospital, under the guise that they could talk to work things out. As a supposed show of good faith, he offered to give her an IV treatment to help with her pregnancy, which she accepted. However, according to authorities, what TTBN didn't know is that Sun had secretly added sleeping pills to the IV solution. After she passed out, he allegedly beat and stabbed her to death with a hammer and meat cleaver he had purchased and hidden in the room. Disturbingly, investigators say this was only the start of Sun's plan. Once TTBN was dead, he allegedly used other supplies he had prepared, including surgical gloves and knives, to cut her body into pieces. They claim he then placed the remains into several plastic bags, which he disposed of across 2 different cities. It's believed he got rid of TTBN's clothes, the murder weapons, and the license plate from her vehicle in similar fashion. If all of this wasn't chilling enough, authorities allege that Sun took all of TTBN's valuables, including several pieces of gold jewelry and 2 cell phones, and sold them at a local pawn shop. He reportedly used the proceeds from the murder for personal expenses. Though Sun was initially arrested roughly 2 weeks after the crime, this week's indictment reportedly came after a long and complex investigation. Sun is now facing charges of murder, robbery, and illegal possession of military weapons. Authorities in Japan's Saitama Prefecture say that a 46-year-old man was arrested this week after he allegedly stole an ambulance he called after becoming fed up with paramedics during the middle of a drunken episode. According to reports, the whole thing started shortly before 7 p.m. on January 20th, when emergency responders were called to a home in the city of Kiku. They arrived to find a 46-year-old man, later identified as Hiroshi Hirata, who was complaining of stomach pain and saying that he needed to go to the hospital. The 3 paramedics who responded to the call checked Hirata out, but determined that there was nothing wrong with him. He was just too drunk and probably needed to take it easy. However, this was apparently not what Hirata wanted to hear. After pulling out a knife on the emergency workers, he allegedly threatened them, then hopped behind the wheel of their ambulance and drove off. The 46-year-old didn't make it very far, though. According to police, they found him and the ambulance in the parking lot of a drugstore about 100 yards down the road and immediately arrested him. When questioned, Hirata reportedly explained his actions this way, telling police, quote, "I thought I would go to the hospital myself." Authorities in the Indian state of Uttar Pradesh say that they were given a chilling confession from the prime suspect in an awful double murder case this week, after a young woman and her daughter were allegedly killed by her obsessed lover after she recently began ignoring him. The whole thing was uncovered sometime on January 16th, when family members of the 24-year-old female victim, identified only by the name Geeta, became concerned after they were unable to contact her. Loved ones knew that Geeta and her 6-year-old daughter, Deepika, were by themselves because her husband Prakash worked in Mumbai, so they decided to check on her at her home in the town of Malihabad. When they did, they were met by a nightmarish scene. Geeta and Deepika were both dead inside, the result of a brutal attack. Both of them had been beaten with a large stick, and their throats had been cut with a knife. While the crime first appeared like it could have been a robbery because valuables were missing from the home, investigators changed course when they found 2 cell phones at the scene. A review of the call history showed that Geeta had been in contact with a 25-year-old man named Vikas Jaiswal. This wasn't just a couple of conversations either. The log showed that Jaiswal had called Geeta more than 1,600 times in the past 11 months. After police tracked down the 25-year-old, he eventually confessed to the crime. He stated he had killed Geeta and her daughter in a rage after he went to confront her about why she had been avoiding him. Jaiswal explained that he and Geeta met during the pandemic lockdowns in 2020 and soon after began an affair. Since Geeta's husband was away for long periods, they began spending most of their time together. He also started spending a lot of money on her. He estimated that half of his earnings were going to her in the form of cash and lavish gifts. Jaiswal had apparently been fine with this arrangement, Until about 2 weeks ago, when Gita abruptly cut off contact. Without warning or explanation, he said she refused to talk to him and blocked his number. Feeling that he was owed an explanation, Jaiswal stated that he went to Gita's home on the night of January 15th and broke in by climbing up a pole onto the second story. After making his way into the bedroom where she was sleeping, he woke her up and demanded to know why she was ignoring him. He said that when Gita told him to leave, he snapped, first killing her and then her daughter. He stated that he took as much of the jewelry and the other gifts he had given her that he could find, hoping it would make the crime look like a robbery. Then he fled. He claimed he thought about taking his own life after, but eventually changed his mind. He then tried to further cover up his involvement by attempting to insert himself into the investigation, pretending to comfort Gita's family, and even suggesting other suspects to them. This was obviously unsuccessful though, and Jaiswal was arrested on January 18th after police put all of these pieces together. At the time of this recording, he remains in custody and is awaiting formal charges. Authorities in Argentina's Buenos Aires province say that they investigated quite the bizarre burglary last week, after an accused thief managed to slip through a small opening in order to rob a convenience store. Something that was made all the more impressive by the fact that the suspect only has one leg. The strange situation unfolded in the early morning hours of January 15th at the store in question in the town of Paso del Rey. Surveillance footage shows the unidentified man walking past the 24-hour business shortly before 4:30 a.m. when he notices that the employee who is supposed to be working is fast asleep. After dropping off some of his stuff, the suspect returns to the store about 10 minutes later. That's when he proceeds to climb through a small opening in the business's security gate meant to be used to serve customers who want to make purchases outside of the normal store hours. The accused thief was not only limber, it turned out he was also very efficient. After having a quick search around the inside, he managed to steal a cell phone and the equivalent of about $20 US in cash before crawling back out the same way he came in. He did it all in just 53 seconds and without waking up the sleeping employee. Unfortunately for the thief, it seems his own skill may have been his undoing. Footage of the one-legged man quickly went viral online when it was shared, allowing police to identify and arrest him within a matter of hours. At the time of this recording, no information has been released about the possible charges he will now be facing. Authorities in the Australian state of Victoria say that they are searching for 2 unknown suspects this week after a woman was killed in a nightmarish house fire, one that is believed to have been a mistakenly targeted arson attack. The whole thing began shortly after 2 a.m. on January 16th, when police received a frantic 000 call from 27-year-old Katie Tangy. Katie said that she was inside of a burning townhouse on Dover Street in the Melbourne suburb of Truganina, and that she was trapped and unable to escape. When emergency responders arrived at the scene, they quickly realized that the situation was extremely bad. There were flames pouring out of the home, and the blaze would not be easy to get under control. Because of the intensity of the fire, it wasn't until roughly 2 hours later that firefighters were able to make their way inside the gutted residence. When they did, sadly, they found Katie dead, along with a family golden retriever named Sunny. Very quickly, authorities learned that the deadly fire was no accident. Surveillance footage taken from the area showed 2 unknown suspects pulling up to the property in a dark-colored vehicle at 2:03 a.m. The pair had jumped a fence and gone towards the house, where it's now alleged that they poured an accelerant and lit it on fire. They could be seen getting back into their vehicle and speeding away from the scene at 2:10 a.m., just as the townhouse erupted into flames. Because of these details, investigators say they believe the attack was targeted, though they suspect that Katie was not the intended victim. Instead, they say they think this was a case of mistaken identity. According to reports, the home belongs to Katie's brother Ethan, who at the time was away with his new wife. The couple were on their honeymoon, and Katie had agreed to help them out by house-sitting and looking after their dog. Tragically, Katie had been a bridesmaid in her brother's wedding just weeks earlier. At the time of this recording, unfortunately, not much else is known about the case. While police have stated that they believe the murder was a case of mistaken identity, they have not clarified whether they believe Ethan and his wife were the intended victims, or whether the Dover Street residence was incorrectly targeted altogether. Katie's loved ones say that they are devastated by what happened, and that the world has been robbed of an incredibly kind and beautiful person. In addition to being a talented makeup artist and photographer, Katie was popular in the local burlesque scene, where she performed under the stage name Vivian May Royal. Currently, Victoria police are asking for anyone who might have information about the case or the identity of the two suspects to please come forward. Authorities in Slovakia say that an 18-year-old man is facing murder charges after he allegedly carried out a disturbing knife attack at his high school last week, a crime that left 2 people dead and 1 other injured. The situation unfolded around 1 p.m. on January 16th at the school in question in the town of Spišská Stará. According to local media, the teenage suspect, a student there identified only as Samuel S., was supposed to be writing an English exam that day. However, sometime after entering the building, he instead allegedly began attacking staff and his fellow classmates with a knife he had brought with him. He reportedly fled the scene immediately afterwards. While police initially put out an alert to the public telling them to be vigilant because Samuel was believed to be armed and dangerous, he was found and taken into custody a short time later. Sadly, the update on the conditions of the victims was not nearly as positive. It was announced that 2 people had been killed as a result of the knife attack, an 18-year-old girl named Alenka, as well as the 51-year-old deputy principal of the school, Maria. A third victim, who was also an 18-year-old female student, was rushed to a hospital where she is now said to be recovering. Though the exact details of the attack still appear largely unconfirmed, and frankly, kind of all over the place, here's what we've been able to put together after reading a bunch of reports from local Slovakian news sites which interviewed police, witnesses, and members of school staff. According to these sources, Samuel S. was known to be a troubled individual well before this week's deadly incident. Though he is apparently quite academically gifted, he had a lengthy disciplinary record at the school, despite only being a student there for about a year and a half. More concerningly, it's said that he had previously been investigated by both the school and police after he sent threatening messages to some of his female classmates. That's not all. Apparently, he was expelled from his previous high school over similar incidents, including at least one that actually involved a physical assault. While school officials have claimed that they did not know about Samuel's history at his former high school, they obviously did know about these recent threats. However, they claim that when they spoke to police, they treated it as a bullying issue and didn't seem to think that the situation was that serious. For their part, police say that they still offered to be present at the school on the day of the attack and at other times because of the concerns, but were told by the school that it was not necessary. Right now, the blame and finger-pointing seems to be ongoing, but meanwhile, few answers as to why any of this happened appear to be available. Given the fact that all of the victims were women, as well as the teen suspect's previous history of threats, many have speculated that there was a gender-based motive behind the crime. However, police say that so far, they don't feel they have enough evidence to conclusively say this. What authorities have said is that they believe the crime was planned in advance, and that Samuel has now been charged with premeditated murder and attempted murder. At the time of this recording, he remains in custody while the investigation continues. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.